Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for the IHI Call 8 on two-stage calls, rules and procedures. So my name is Nassima, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. And before we start, I would like to share some information with you. We are recording this session, and it will be published on the IHI website. We will also publish the presentation slides. The call will be launched shortly, and all the links and details of how to apply will be published on the IHI website at the Funding and Tenders portal. Important point, if you want to ask questions, please use the chat function on your right corner of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Today, we will have two presenters. We have Bolivios, who is Scientific Operation Coordinator, and we also have Desmond, who is Legal Officer. So now I will hand over to Bolivios for the presentation.
Thank you, Nassima, and thank you also to the communication team for the support we received during the preparation of this series of webinars. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Call 8 webinar on the rules and procedures. Together with my colleague Desmond, we will present you the participation, funding, and intellectual property rules. We'll give you some tips on the proposal template and the evaluation criteria. We will also present the main points of the grant agreement and the consortium agreement that we should take into account. Also, we'll go through the call timelines, and of course, at the end of the presentation, some tips and points to remember before submitting your application. IHI, as many of you will know, is a public-private partnership between the European Union, represented by the European Commission, and the 5 trade associations, COSIR, FPIA, METEC, Europa Bio, and Vaccines Europe. The trade associations have come together to collaborate and to fund projects that are tackling key challenges that are preventing innovation from reaching the patients. In IHI, we fund projects that are multidisciplinary and cross-sectoral. And this is because we have to recognize that no single entity has the knowledge and resources, of course, to be able to tackle some of the key challenges we face by themselves. And this is actually the first key concept that I would like to introduce to you about the two-stage procedure. The pre-identified industry consortium, including, of course, co-deputy partners, if are part of the topic, that align themselves around the real challenge in healthcare and agree to work together across the different sectors and commit resources, and at the end, they develop the topic text. IHI is actually supporting the pre-identified industry consortium to write the topic text, but the ideas and the key challenges are developed and driven by the industry consortium themselves. We publish the topic text and we invite new ideas from the applicant consortium that are needed to address this challenge. And of course, to support the pre-identified industry consortium to implement the work together. The project that we fund have an advantage because there is often a lot of funding available, and so this scale is a key to success and is provided by the leveraging the IHI funding with the industry contributions, of course, during the second stage, where we form the full consortium and what we call the public-private partnership. Outcomes should be transformative for healthcare and meet the end users' needs. Our project should generate impacts that are going to benefit patients and the healthcare professionals. Here, you can see a schematic that simply summarizes the two-stage procedure, which is unique for the IHI program. In no other program of Horizon Europe, you will see this process, and it's very important to understand while you're preparing your proposal. As I mentioned in my previous slide, the pre-identified industry consortium, together with the contributing partners, are drafting the topic text. The topic text is a part of the annual work program, which at the end is approved by the IHI Governing Board. The IHI Program Office is in charge of publishing the call in the Fundings and Turtle portal and opening the first stage of the submission. We invite the applicant consortium that usually consists of academics, hospitals, regulators, patient organizations, and for-profit legal entities, SMEs, or companies with an annual turnover of less than 500 million euro. In principle, these entities are eligible for funding. They prepared a short proposal of 20 pages that goes through the evaluation process. Before the actual evaluation, the program office is always performing the admissibility and eligibility of the proposals. The evaluation is done by external evaluators, and the highly ranked proposal, the first one only, is invited to the second stage of the evaluation, where together with a pre-identified industry consortium, they work together in order to submit a full proposal. We are going to a second round of evaluation, once again with independent experts. It's important to mention, though, that here there is no competition since we have only one proposal to be evaluated per topic, so it's a go, no-go decision. If the proposal is successfully evaluated and pass the thresholds, then we'll go through the grant agreement preparation phase with the support of IHI Program Office. And at the end, the consortium will sign the grant agreement with the IHI Program Office. Of course, it's a requirement for the IHI projects. Prior to the grant agreement signature, there is a signature of a consortium agreement, but these elements will be discussed during the presentation afterwards. Next slide, please. Thank you, Nassima. To recap, for the two-stage procedure, we have two specific types of beneficiaries: the pre-identified industry consortium and the not pre-identified. Who is the pre-identified? Are the industry association members and the contributing partners who are responsible for the 45% in-kind contribution. These entities are the main drivers of the topic text. They identify their in-kind contribution through expertise and asset. You can find the list of these members in the topic text. You will see the overall contribution that they will bring, but this is not per partner. They are not eligible for funding, and they cannot participate with the applicant consortium. So the ones who are the main drivers of the topic text cannot be part of the applicant consortium. The ones who are actually applying during the stage one, of course, they are not involved in the topic definition. In some cases, we can see that they can join afterwards if the proposal is selected for funding, so they can join during the grant agreement preparation phase or via an amendment. Of course, they're eligible for funding. And importantly, do not contact the pre-identified industry consortium during the application phase. Now we're moving to the eligibility and hand over to Desmond.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Nassima said, my name is Desmond Barry. I'm one of the lawyers here at IHI. So we're going to cover some issues of eligibility, and there's basically 3 points here, which is eligibility of the consortia generally, and then specific eligibility either to participate or to receive funding. So very briefly, for an actual consortia, which is obviously a group of entities that are coming together to address one of the challenges in the topic texts. Basically, we need that consortia to fit certain criteria, and we're going to come to the exact composition there. Then we're also going to look at the wider aspects of eligibility, which is what exactly one of those legal entities is, how to ensure that those legal entities form a consortium which is viable. When is the legal entity eligible to participate in the actions, and when are they eligible to receive funding? So if we go to the next slide, then legal entity, I think we jumped to, yeah, thank you. Legal entity there, this is just quite a legalistic answer, but what the takeaway here is that legal entity is any legal natural person created and recognized as such under the union. So it can be a company, it can be a hospital, it can be a foundation, it can in certain circumstances be a person, and that's what we classify as a legal entity. And then discrete legal entities come together to form consortia. So then for a consortia to be eligible to participate in an IHI action, then it basically needs, it's a collection of legal entities, and at least one of those independent legal entities has to be established in a member state, and at least two other independent legal entities, each established either in a member state or Horizon Europe associated countries. So we'll get on to member states and associated countries now with this slide, which is color coded. So I'm going to refer back to this slide a little bit later as well, but what to remember is basically if you're blue, then obviously you're the European Union and some of the overseas territories, and that's all clearly marked. Green is what we call low to medium income countries, and they are eligible to receive funding. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then we have the yellow, which are those members or countries, sorry, which are associated to the Horizon Europe program. Now, whereas before that grouping of associated countries was quite Eurocentric, we've had some interesting entries lately, which have basically broadened the scope of the associated countries considerably. So as you can see from the map there on the left-hand side, Canada is now associated to the Horizon Europe program. They're not associated to all of the program, but they are in Pillar 2, which luckily IHI falls into. So therefore, if you are a legal entity coming from Canada, then you are considered associated for the purposes of IHI actions. And also in the bottom right-hand corner, hard to see, but it's there, New Zealand has basically recently associated as well, and more are incoming. This list we're expecting to grow reasonably quickly over the next few years. The gray countries there are what we call third countries, and they are not in any way associated with Horizon Europe, and that has implications then in relation to whether they can receive funding and such. So the best examples obviously are the United States and maybe Australia, just to contrast with Canada and New Zealand. If you're a legal entity coming from United States, you're coming from a third country. And we'll go to the next slide and we'll explain why this is important. So I said a couple of slides ago that there was a couple of different aspects of eligibility. The first one is eligibility to participate, and the simple rule is any legal entity, regardless of where you are, regardless of where you're established, whether it's a European country, whether it's an associated country, or even a third country, you're eligible and welcome to participate in Horizon Europe and, by extension, IHI actions. Now, there's, of course, a couple of exceptions there, which I'll talk about a little later. But the general approach is, ideally, regardless of where you are, in the world, you are more than welcome to participate in IHI actions. The difference is drawn essentially in the eligibility to receive funding. So in general, those legal entities that are participating, they can actually receive funding directly from IHI if they either are coming from a member state, or they're from an associated country, or they're actually in a low to middle income country. So with reference to the previous map, if you're blue or yellow or green, which is a significant amount of the globe, then you're automatically eligible to receive funding. And of course, this list obviously changes over time as more and more countries, as I was mentioning, they associate with their Horizon Europe program. So there's a couple of points that we've identified here at the bottom, which is eligibility for funding. Because the list is changing, the list of who is eligible for funding has changed as well, because we've had countries associating with them go forward. And then we've also identified here at the bottom, Canada from 2023 and the UK from the 1st of January 2024 are considered associated countries for the purpose of IHI. So I'm sure we'll get questions on this later on, but maybe I can just head off a couple of them. If you are a legal entity coming from the UK, you are, for the purposes of Call 8A, eligible and welcome to participate, and B, you are eligible to receive funding. And the same applies for Canada. Go to the next slide. As we basically said, third countries, which were the grey countries on the map, like the US, like Australia, they're not associated to the Horizon Europe program. Therefore, from the start, they're not eligible to actually receive funding. They're eligible to participate, though. And there's a couple of caveats here, which is one, theoretically, as we have at the bottom half of the slide, if you have an entity coming from a non-associated third country, they can, in really exceptional circumstances, receive funding from IHI-JU from us when their participation in the project is considered absolutely essential. If they're bringing something really integral to the actual project, then we can, in exceptional circumstances, after looking at it in a lot of detail and maybe taking the opinion of the independent evaluator, we can decide whether such entities are needed for the project, whether they're essential, and therefore they may be eligible to receive funding. And that information is put in with the initial proposal, where these entities are identified, where the fact that they're coming from third countries is stated, and the reasons why IHI should consider extending this exceptional funding to them. It's not always guaranteed, but it does happen. And then just to refine the idea slightly, even if you are coming from a third country, and even if you're not going to receive exceptional funding, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't participate, because we see this a lot, for instance, with Switzerland, where the entity's costs which they incur in engaging in the action can actually be met by the government, the national government itself. So Switzerland, we know from anecdotal evidence, has a quite advanced process for entities from Switzerland to participate in Horizon Europe projects, and the Swiss government will actually meet their costs, and that's something which is it's quite normal at this stage. USA, it seems to be a bit more challenging, but we still have a large number of US entities participating in IHI projects. Next slide. As I said, there are a couple of caveats in relation to the everybody's welcome approach, which is, I'll just draw your attention to two here, which is in relation to the situation in Ukraine. The position for the European Commission, and therefore IHI by extension, is that legal entities established in Russia, Belarus, or in the non-government controlled areas of Ukraine in the east, they're not eligible to participate in IHI actions in any capacity. So just to remind you what I was saying, where you have basically two levels of eligibility to participate and eligibility to receive funding. Unfortunately, entities coming from Russia, Belarus, etc., are not eligible to do either of those, and they're not going to be in IHI projects, at least for the moment. And then the second caveat we have relates to Hungary, where there was basically the European Council took a decision which basically states that certain publicly funded entities from Hungary basically are not eligible to receive funding from IHI. So they can participate, but they're not going to be funded by the joint undertaking. The list is available online, and it's very accessible, and you can basically establish which of these entities would be able to receive funding and which entities would not. But if you are putting together a proposal for an IHI call, then I would strongly recommend, if you have that Hungarian entity there, to find out exactly what their legal status is, whether they're connected to one of these public trusts, check them against the list, which is actually online. That should answer all your questions. But if you have a further question, please don't hesitate to reach out to the legal team here at IHI. The legal team here, myself, Carolina, and Dominica, we would be very happy to answer your questions and guide you through the, let's say, the more nuanced aspects of this particular question. I've already covered the restrictive measures there. Yeah, we'll go on to the IPR. So normally when we start talking about intellectual property rights, a certain section of the audience goes quiet. So I'm only going to cover this in 2 slides and just cover the absolute basics of IPR, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And this again can address some of the questions that we sometimes get after these webinars. So here we've prepared a snapshot, a very, very simplified snapshot of an IHI action and the IPR that operates within the parameters of the project. So On the left-hand side, we basically have the background identification. Now, all that basically means is that in accordance with the rules that are set out in the grant agreement, anybody who's coming to an IHI project, they have the option to bring background. And that background is basically assets which they control before the project starts, which are going to be used in the project normally to generate results. And how they are basically quantified and qualified is that in the consortium agreement, which is a separate document from the grant agreement. I'll talk about the consortium agreements later on, but basically in the annex to the consortium agreement, all the participants in the project basically identify exactly which background they are bringing to the project and what it's actually going to be used for. And that's very useful then, because that's basically the foundation of the work that's going to be done in the project is basically going to come from the background. So it's very, very important. Then on the right-hand side, the blue box, as you can see, we've titled this implementation of the action. So what happens here is the background, as I said, is brought in by the participants. And then throughout the action, a series of access rights are utilized and results are generated. Now, if you go down to the bottom second half of the page, we've got some definitions there. And we basically say results are any tangible or intangible effect of the action, such as data, know-how, information. All that basically means is that if you are doing work in the project and you are producing something, the chances are that this is going to fall under the heading of results, because as the legal agreement says, results are any tangible or intangible output. So the results, to reassure everyone, if you generate a result, the result remains yours. And that is an absolute core principle of the grant agreement. So both the results that you generate and the background you have brought both remain yours, subject to the access rights which are created in the agreement to allow everyone to share the work and do their own tasks in the agreement. So when you bring in background, you are going to grant access rights to the other beneficiaries in the project so they can get their own work done in the project and they can do some associated work. Similarly, when you generate results, even though you own that result, you are also granting access rights to everyone else in the project to use those results. Now, access rights either for background or results do not in any way touch upon commercial exploitation. So if you're bringing assets to an IHI project, you can bring that asset to an IHI project with complete confidence that your commercial rights are going to be protected and you don't have to worry about someone running off with your background and commercializing it. If you generate results, similarly, that result remains yours. The access rights you are granting to someone else doesn't include commercialization. So someone can't take the work that you've actually done and run off and commercialize it. I should say, however, that if you do want to commercialize these aspects, you're more than welcome to, and you're free to, and that's not something that the IHI office gets involved in. What we're concerned about is that anyone who needs access to your background and results to get their work done in the project and to achieve the results of the project gets what they need. Next slide. And then just a couple of spins on this. So in terms of the IPR rules, just for the lawyers in the room, if you want to look into this in detail, then there is the model grant agreement itself, Article 16, which is there, which is that, let's say that gives the bare bones of the actual IPR rules. However, if you're doing an IHI action, you really need to look into Annex 5 of the model grant agreement, where there is a lot of specific language for the intellectual property rules that apply to IHI actions. And just a bit of a flag here, because in Annex 5, the way it's actually constructed, there is the section which applies to the JUs generally, to the other two, the joint undertakings, one of which obviously is IHI. But then if you dig a bit deeper, there's a subsection of language which applies just to IHI actions. So again, for the lawyers in the room, if you're going into the grant agreement, make sure that you go through Annex 5 thoroughly and make sure that you find everything that applies for IHI actions if you are responsible for a team that's getting involved in an IHI project. And then the last point where there could be additional language is the applicable call conditions. Then some live items which we always want to draw attention to. In accordance with, or let's say in conjunction with, the General Horizon Europe approach, our joint undertaking maintains the right to object to transfers of ownership or results, or to the granting of exclusive licenses if the target of the transfer is outside of the EU. Now, all that basically means is that if you've generated something in an IHI project and you want to transfer it outside of the EU to a non-EU jurisdiction or a non-EU recipient, you notify IHI JU, we take a quick look and we essentially make sure that your transfer isn't going to jeopardize or endanger IHI or EU strategic interests. We've developed some language on this. It's worked very well so far, but we know for people new to the program, it does raise questions. So what I would say is if you're not sure, reach out to the IHI legal team and we're happy to discuss it further with you. But I can assure you it's not problematic. Similarly, we also have affordable access provisions, which is 3A, which basically means that in some calls, when provided for in the call conditions, additional exploitation obligations for relevant IHI topics are there. And this involves additional reporting obligations and a lot of work to be done in relation to how a product or service that is involved from a clinical trial can be made more affordable, available, and accessible downstream after the end of the project. Anecdotally, I don't think we have any 3A topics in call 8.
As far as I remember.
Yeah, I think we're clear. So, just what I would do is, just to be absolutely sure, check your specific call topic text. It's always the last special condition, and it says whether 3A applies or does not apply. If memory serves, I think we're totally clear for call 8, but just urge everyone to double check. Next one is results ownership list. This actually isn't problematic, but we just flag it because it's quite different from Horizon 2020. At the end of the project, basically, a results ownership list will be generated whereby every result which is generated in the project basically is listed and the generating beneficiary is identified. Now, this is really good for a few reasons. One, obviously, it's clear who owns what, who generated what. B, it also reveals if any transfers have taken place before the end of the project, which is allowed, which is fine, but we just need to know who the final owner is. C, it's also useful just in case someone doesn't want to actually exploit the results. Because if you look at the very, very last bullet point on the page, we basically say that unexploited project results can be matched with interested parties via the Horizon results platform. So the idea is, because the stuff that's generated in IHI projects is actually very useful and sometimes quite valuable, we want to ensure that, if a result is generated but it's abandoned by the generating beneficiary and no one else in the consortium wants it, we're pretty sure that we can match it with someone who will want to exploit it or utilize it. And that's partly what the results ownership list is for. Yeah, and then we have it in red here at the bottom, just to remind everyone. I'll talk about it in a few minutes, but the consortium agreement is really where you get into the detail of how the intellectual property rights are going to work. But we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. Next one.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we're moving to the proposal template and the evaluation criteria. IHI is operating under Horizon Europe, and we're following the proposal template and, of course, the evaluation criteria. However, we adapt this proposal template and the evaluation criteria to our specific needs. The proposal template consists of 2 parts, the Part A and the Part B. With regards to the Part A, which is generated by the IT system, it's based on the information that you, the participants, introduce in the funding and tenders portal. You can always be able to update the information in the submission system, but this is just before the submission deadline. The Part A has information with regards to the acronym, the proposal title, the duration of your project, the details of the participants, and the budget. For the first stage, the budget is an overall amount, and this is the requested amount from the IHI joint undertaking. So here we don't have a detailed budget. It's only a global amount that covers eligible costs of the work provided by the applicant consortium. The Part B of the proposal is the narrative that includes the 3 sections that each corresponds to an evaluation criterion: excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. In IHI, we usually publish topics that fall under the research and innovation actions. The short proposal during the stage 1 should be maximum 20 pages. Excess pages will be automatically made illegible and will not be taken into consideration by the expert evaluators. All the templates are available in our website, but at the same time, you can find them and download them from the submission environment. For the short proposal, there is also a compulsory annex, which is an IHI specific annex that will help us to meet our reporting obligations. So the coordinator will be asked to fill in a specific Excel sheet with the different details that should be submitted in IHI about the applicants participating in the proposal. Even though this annex will not be part of the evaluation, the coordinator will not be able to submit the proposal if this annex is missing. So for the call 8, some highlights. Regarding the indicative contribution, the funding, for each topic, the maximum contribution is set and estimated industry contribution are set in the call text. So there you will find more or less, but this is up to you to convince the experts evaluators about your requested funding. The plan for dissemination, exploitation, and communication activities, together with the clinical studies, if this will be applicable, is only for the second stage. So we are not expecting at the first stage the dissemination, exploitation activities plan and also the clinical studies. Regarding the evaluation criteria, each proposal is evaluated by the minimum 3 independent experts. However, in IHI, due to the complexity of the call, the budget size, and also the technical nature of the topics, we always aim for more experts from 6 to 7 in order to ensure that all the expertise required is covered within with the panel of experts. So each proposal should evaluate it as it is. So the experts evaluate what is written in the proposal with not making any assumptions. So it's really important to be clear. And at the same time, the proposal is assessed based on the evaluation criteria, and each criteria goes from 0 to 5. The threshold for excellence, impact, and implementation is 3. However, the total is 10 out of 15. So even a proposal will get the minimum threshold for each criterion, this proposal will fail on the total and therefore will not be considered for funding. Another one point here that I would like to introduce is based on the previous experience that we have in IAMI2, but also in IHI, the highly ranked proposals reach excellent threshold from 14 to 15. So if you're aiming to apply for the call 8 and in general for the 2-stage call, you should be sure that you at least can reach an excellent score. Regarding the evaluation criteria, in the excellence, it's very important to address all the objectives of the topic text. I mean, we've seen some proposals that applicants pick and choose, but this at the end will be reflected either as a shortcoming or most oftenly as a weakness that the proposal normally receives below the threshold score. It's important also to clearly describe your methodology has incorporated the knowledge of various stakeholders. Here it's important not to confuse. When we say knowledge, we're not talking about the consortium composition, but about the knowledge built into the methodology. With regards to the impact, it's important to provide meaningful and measurable estimates when it comes to the project contribution to impacts. We often see unrealistic impacts with no justification, and this always reflects at the end with below the threshold score. In the implementation, prepare clear graphs. At the first stage of the evaluation, it's not really important to list deliverables, but focus on the overall structure of the project, the work packages, and the objectives. At the same time, it's important to reflect and leave some space and describe how the consortium will fit with the pre-identified industry consortium. As I mentioned in my previous slides, you've seen all the not pre-identified industry consortium partners together with the contributing partners in if any, in the topic text, and what assets and contributions they bring to the topic text. So here is the time to describe how these will come and work with you, to show that you have taken these elements into consideration and you're aware that you are not on your own. So this implementation part should be clearly described and show also your vision, how you will work together with a pre-identified industry consortium. Now, Desmond will also give us some points regarding the grant agreement and the consortium agreement.
Thanks, Plutus. So yes, I mean, this is one slide. We're just going to cover some main points here. I'd referred to these documents earlier on. So basically, if a proposal is selected for funding and it goes towards full implementation, then essentially we're going to be looking at two core documents that will need to be completed by the consortia. There are many other documents, but these are the two core ones. So the first one is the grant agreement itself, which I've referred to. And the second one is the consortium agreement. Now, if I can draw a simple distinction between the two, the grant agreement essentially lays down the core rules for everything that's going to happen in the project. It covers, who the coordinator is going to be. It covers, the responsibilities of the coordinator. It covers the intellectual property. It covers the funding. It covers how costs are declared. It's quite a comprehensive document. There's the model grant agreement here, and then there's also, what's called the annotated model grant agreement, which basically takes the core text of the grant agreement and then adds several hundred pages of good practice and explanations and examples and such. So again, for the lawyers in the room, I'd recommend, if you haven't seen it before, you should track down the annotated model grant agreement. I think we provide a link at the end, and it's extremely useful perhaps for looking at how the project should actually work. The consortium agreement is different in the sense that the consortium agreement essentially deals with the day-to-day running of the project, who's responsible for what, the governance of the project, how something like the intellectual property rules, which are explained in the grant agreement, how they are actually operated by the beneficiaries in the actual consortium. And whereas in the grant agreement, IHI is a signatory, obviously, because we're the granting authority, for the consortium agreement, IHI doesn't actually sign it. So it's just an agreement between the participants in the actual project itself. As we have here in the bullet points, one of the most important things for the consortium agreement is that it cannot, may not, and will not conflict or contradict anything in the grant agreement, because the grant agreement has supremacy over the consortium agreement. We say that it needs to be adapted for the specificities of each IHI project. That said, there are a number of templates available online. For example, the industry private members to IHI prepared a template consortium agreement, which is available on their own websites. There's a link to those places on the IHI website. And the idea is that the text of this template has been optimized for use in IHI projects. There's also the DESCA template as well, which is sometimes quite popular. Which template the consortium chooses is at the consortium's discretion. They can discuss it between themselves. We're not going to tell them which template to actually use. Our concern, however, is that the template that is used is appropriate and covers all the bullet points for what we would expect in a consortium agreement. The consortium agreement is also important because IHI will not sign the grant agreement. The project will not start until we have complete assurance that the consortium agreement is agreed between the participants, that there's a final version ready, and that it's being circulated for execution. And generally what happens is we receive a formal notification or a notification from the project coordinator who says, look, it's all done and we're circulating for signature, but on that basis, then the IHI office can go ahead. But if we do not have confirmation from the consortium that the consortium agreement is agreed and everything is resolved and it's being circulated, then no matter how much pressure we receive, we will not sign the grant agreement. So it's extremely important that if your project is selected for funding, when you go through to the preparation stage, that the consortium agreement, it has to be dealt with promptly and collectively, and it has to reflect the needs of everyone in the actual consortium. So there are the two documents that I want to draw your attention to today. Thanks.
Thank you, Desmond. So now we're moving to the timelines part for the call 8. We're expecting to launch the call within the next week, hopefully next 10 days if everything goes well. And but it will be nevertheless in June. With the submission deadline of the short proposals by mid-October. We will run the scientific evaluations by the end of November. And we're targeting mid-December to have the information to the applicants, the evaluation outcome, where the first rank proposal, together with the pre-identified industry consortium, they come together, and by the end of April, should submit the full proposal. In May, we will run the second round of the evaluations. Like we said, there is no competition there. It's just a go, no go decision. However, the experts will evaluate if the proposal, and if successful, the applicants will know that by mid-June 2025, and hopefully by the end of September, we'll have the grant agreement signed with the project coordinators and IHI executive director. Some points to remember before moving towards the end of this webinar. Like I said, IHI is operating under Horizon Europe, and the rules for participation apply to our call for proposals, except if we're specifically derogated. Here, at the moment, we only launch research and innovation actions, so do not forget at least 3 independent legal entities established in the different member states or associate countries. Importantly, 1 legal entity should be established in the member states in order for your proposal to be considered eligible. The page limit is 20 pages for the short proposal. It's prohibited to contact the pre-identified industry consortium, the ones who actually develop the topic text during this process. And the first ranked applicant consortium will be invited to submit the full proposal for the stage 2 evaluation together with the pre-identified industry consortium. And then this will be happening by December this year. Importantly, you should read all the call relevant material from our website. You have a lot of information that you really need to take into consideration while you're preparing your proposal. It's important to start as soon as possible forming your consortium early. Read the topic text, use the proposal template, but also the evaluation form. In the evaluation form, you can see the evaluation criteria and sub-criteria. Ensure that whatever you write in the proposal is clearly describing all the aspects that will be required for the expert evaluators to assess. It's important to think like your evaluators. Create also your own checklist in order to see if you address all the evaluation sub-criteria accordingly. Use the structure of the template and be sure at the same time that your coordinator is financially viable. Please note that in case the coordinators are not financially viable, it will be required to change during the grant agreement preparation phase. So in order to avoid in the future issues, it's important to check in advance the viability of the coordinator. So if you have any questions, please do not contact the industry topic writers, but contact the IHI office in the applicants at ihi.europa.eu. I would like also to draw your attention to all the reference documents we have also in the website and in the funding and titles portal. It's very good to have a look from even the single basic act, but also the strategic research and innovation agenda. And I would like also now maybe Desmond to take this opportunity and of course ask people from this webinar and also disseminate this information. If people have relevant expertise to IHI program, they can always create an expert profiles in the funding and debtors portal, because in IHI, we're always looking for new competent experts in diverse fields to be part of our evaluation process. You have a great experience and you will see how actually the funding process is working within an EU implementing body. If you're interested, of course, send us an email to the experts at ihi.europa.eu, mentioning your expert profiling number, and we will be in contact with you for the future evaluations or even for reviews of ongoing projects. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bolivia from Desmond, for your presentation. So now what I would like to do before moving to the question session is to promote. So the session that we are holding for the call 8. So we will have a session tomorrow morning for the first topic, and then 2 other sessions on Thursday and the last session on Friday. So if you are not registered yet, I will encourage you to do so on your profile in the IHI B2 Match platform. We do have a few questions in, so we can go to the question session. So the first question will be concerning the call process. So we have a person asking, what is the deadline for submission for call 8?
Mid-October.
Okay, thank you. Bolivia, sorry. Again, a question on the call process. How is
Nasiba,
yes.
before, as soon as the call is launched, you will see the exact dates of the submission deadline. So as soon as the call is launched, hopefully in June, we're expecting it very soon, then you will see the exact date in the submission environment.
Okay, perfect, thank you. The second question is, how is the consortium supposed to prepare the first stage without discussing together?
So I think maybe just to repeat what Polybius said when he was talking about the structure of a 2-stage call, I think what's happening here is that those consortia, those applicant consortia that compete in the first stage, they're going to organize themselves organically. And then they will apply in, as Polybius said, it's a competitive stage, and you'll basically have one winner per topic. And then when that winner is confirmed, then it goes through to the second stage, and then that's when you have the discussion with industry, and they discuss together and they form the final consortium. And then the consortium goes to the second stage evaluation, which, as Polybius said, it basically is a go, no-go decision based upon the outcome of the second evaluation. But at the first stage, what's happening is those consortia, they are organizing themselves without any reference to the pre-identified industry consortium. The idea is the pre-identified industry consortia who are in the topic text have no contact with any of the applicant consortia, but to keep it fair and transparent. But then whoever wins the first round of the self-organizing organic consortia, then they come together, and that's when the big discussions with industry takes place.
And I think here the key point, the key concept is the pre-identified industry consortium is developing the topic text. They're defining the key challenges. Now in IHI office, we are inviting new ideas from the applicant consortium on how to tackle these challenges. Only then the one who receives the highest score will come and discuss together based on what they proposed in their proposal, and develop the full proposal that will have the concrete actions that will go to the second stage. So indeed, it's not necessary in the beginning to discuss with the pre-identified industry consortium, because that's the time when you're developing your idea, proposing your ideas on how to tackle these key challenges.
Yeah, thank you both for your reply. So the next question is, what if the proposal with the highest rank in the first stage gets a poor evaluation in stage 2? There is only one proposal left at this stage. Would IHI not grant funding for that call topic at all? Or would another proposal be selected for stage 2 again?
The question is clear indeed. On the outcome of the evaluation, we'll have, of course, the highly ranked proposal, but we also have the reserve list. So in case the proposal will be not passing the evaluation of the second stage, rarely happen this. Of course, it can be, it could be the case. Then the IHI office, together with our partners, we will assess whether we'll move to the reserve list and also have a second round of evaluation. But this should be assessed on a case-by-case basis. But in principle, there is a reserve list for this exact purpose.
Yeah, I think the key thing to emphasize here is that the second evaluation, it's not a rubber stamping exercise. It's an important review that the final consortium in the final form, which involves the winning consortium from the first stage and the industry pre-identified consortium, can work well together. And what they propose is actually meeting the challenges that are in the top text and is actually going to do, to do a good job. And we did have an IMI2, a couple of, as Pliga said, it's rare, but it happened in IMI2 where they failed at the second stage. So it's something that it shows that the process works. It shows that the applicants have to work all the way through the process. It's an important safety mechanism, but it's something that we plan for. If this unlikely event actually takes place.
Thank you. The next question is the industry partner pre-identified by the candidates or is it assigned by the IHI?
They're in the topic text. So if you go into the Call Day topic text when it's released for each topic, you will basically see this is the pre-identified industry consortium and they're listed right there. And then you'll see exactly who they actually are. So I mean, the best thing we can say is that they're again, self-organizing. IHI has not gone out and picked a particular industry participant and said you are going to look after topic text too.
Maybe Desmond's also important to clarify that are not assigned by the IHI program office.
Yeah.
These were the partners, the industry partners, together with the contributing parts, like I mentioned before, they come together and they align for to fund specific projects in specific areas and addressing key challenges. So our topic definition process works quite different. It's not straightforward, of course, but no, are not assigned by IHI.
Okay, thank you. And the last question for the call process area is, are the evaluators unable to discuss with the pre-identified companies?
The evaluators are not discussing with the pre-identified companies, especially in stage one. The evaluators are instructed to evaluate what they see in the proposals. They have their Bible. What is their Bible? The topic text. In the topic text, and based also on the evaluation criteria, they go and assess the proposals. And based on this information, they propose the ranking list with the highest ranked proposal, and this is approved by the governing board. So no, they are not discussing with the pre-identified industry consortium. And even in the second stage, again, we'll go through the same procedure, evaluation criteria and topic text.
And we have another question on the call process. In the preparation of the proposal, should we figure it out where the industry can contribute? So
this is while drafting the implementation part, like I mentioned in the evaluation criteria slide, you can see from the topic text the assets and contributions of the industry consortium, but it's up to you to develop the basic principles of your work plan, and you can see how these contributions and assets fit within your work plan. And this, of course, is just the basic, let's say, ideas. Afterwards, if your proposal is highly ranked and you move with the pre-identified industry consortium, is where you have more detailed work plan, while you would discuss, of course, with these partners in order to make it more in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, and this will go once again through the evaluation process.
Okay, thank you. So let's move to another area, which is the project budgets. So the first question is, when you say responsible for 45% of in-kind contribution, what does it mean exactly? 45 over the 50% expected budget-wise, or 45 over the 100 of in-kind contribution?
Let's step back here. Let's make one general point. For IHI projects, either comes from single stage or two-stage calls, they have to fulfill among the other eligibility criteria, they have to fulfill one specific, which comes to the contributions. All proposals should fulfill the 45% eligibility in terms of the in-kind contributions, including additional activities, including financial contributions. This concept is mostly applicable for the single stage calls, not the two-stage call. Why not the two-stage call? Because the ones who are responsible for the 45% are the IHI private members and contributing partners. In the two-stage call, this 45% is covered, and you can see that from the topic text. These are the assets and contributions coming from the private members and the contributing partners. So the applicant consortium, meaning the academia, the regulators, the hospitals, the private for-profit, the SMEs, the ones who are actually eligible for funding, they shouldn't be worried for the 45%. Why? Because this is covered by the private members and contributing partners. For the single stage call, which is the different case, these should be covered in the proposal because it's only one evaluation process, it's one stage process. But I wouldn't focus on this now because in 2024, we're not expecting any other single stage call. So let's focus for this two stage for the call 8, where, as I said, the applicant consortium shouldn't worry for the 45% because it's already covered from the topic text.
Thank you, Bolivius. And the next question, is the budget part of the evaluation? At which stage we must submit it?
The budget is, as indicated in the part A of the proposal, is the overall expected contribution from the applicant consortium. Even though you have an indicative budget mentioned in the topic text, in the part A, you should also briefly assess how much money you will need according to the specific needs you have based on the established work plan you have at this stage. But these budgets will be also transformed in second stage, where the pre-identified industry consortium will come when you have more closer idea about the specific task, the specific work packages, and also how the partners will contribute to this work plan.
Thank you. And the next one, does the applicant consortium need to make in-kind contributions?
No, it's not. This is for the private members of IHI and the contributing partners.
Okay. Next one, should the in-kind contribution from industry be secured in the first stage, or is that in the second stage? Has this changed from previous IHI proposal, where it was up to the consortium to find the in-kind contribution and will be provided later by the pre-identified industry consortium?
Once again, the industry contribution in the first stage is reflected in the topic text. I think here Luis Marco is confusing the single stage and the two-stage call. Indeed, in the single stage, the in-kind contribution are reflected in the proposal. Is not the case here. Here, we should take into consideration this contribution for the implementation part, but is not for the applicant consortium to secure the 45%. This is for the single stage. For the two-stage, is not the case.
Okay, thank you, Bolivius. The next one, could you expand on the financial viability of the coordinator?
Yes, in the funding and tenders portal, you will you will see a link actually where you can, the coordinators can pre-fill some information about their annual accounts, where they can see if they're financially viable or not. The research executive agency is in charge of this calculation, let's say like that. But please contact the applicant's mailbox, where we can give you more information and send you also the link. Unfortunately, I don't have it here right now, but you can contact us separately and we can provide you the information.
Thank you. The next one, can a UK partner be the consortium lead or partner only?
So this question, I mean, at first blush, it seems a very simple answer, but let me just put a slight nuance on it. So as we said, the UK from the 1st of January is associated to Horizon Europe. So very much so in IHI, a UK entity can become the coordinator of a project. And I guess that's what we're talking to when we say consortium lead. Now, the same would apply for the yellow countries as well. So I guess, as we said, Canada, New Zealand, the other associated countries, conceivably you could have a coordinator from those countries as well. That works fine as well. But the reason why I'm being guarded in my language is it's not enough just to be from those countries and in the project, because as we said earlier on, you can have different types of participants in a project. So the key point is that if you're going to be a coordinator of a project, whether you're from an EU country or whether you're from an associated country, you also have to be a beneficiary, which is a particular type of participant. So you cannot, for example, be a coordinator and an associated partner in the project. You cannot be a coordinator if the role you are taking in the project is affiliated entity, because by definition, the coordinator is a beneficiary who is taking the coordination role, and that's defined in the grant agreement. That's something to be very careful on. So I direct you to the first 3 or 4 articles of the grant agreement, which talks about the various types of participants. But that's the simple answer is yes, so long as you are a beneficiary. But if you're an associated partner or an affiliated entity, then the answer is very clearly no.
Thank you, Desmond. And the next one, what about legal entities from Switzerland?
Yeah, so as we said, I mean, obviously we have an awful lot of participation from Switzerland, and their participation is it's valued very much by the program office and by the projects that they contribute to. Switzerland, the current information we have is that Switzerland are sitting this one out. They're not associating with Horizon Europe yet, so they are, as I said, a third country. So what that means is they are extremely welcome to participate. We love having them, but we cannot fund them. Conceivably, as I said on my slides, if they bring something absolutely essential, then we could consider funding them. But the normal model is, and as I understand, this is extremely well developed, they participate in the project and then their costs are picked up, reimbursed by the Swiss government, who has quite a comprehensive system in place to do this. So if there is a Swiss entity, you know, who's thinking about getting involved, I would say 2 things. 1, you're extremely welcome, great to have you. But 2, please contact the Swiss government and find out exactly the criteria for the reimbursement for your costs, so you know what the conditions are before you get involved in an IHI project and you start incurring these costs, because the chances are very high that we won't be able to reimburse your costs.
Thank you, Desmond. The next one, whom should be the coordinator of the single stage, industry or academia lead? Yeah,
so I think Polivius touched on this one of the previous answers. I think this is where maybe people are getting confused. So what I'd rephrase the question to say, whom should be the coordinator of the first stage? Because this is a 2-stage call. So we basically have what we call a first stage and a second stage. They combine to make the 2-stage call, whereas a single stage is, we use that language when we talk about a different type of call, which is the single stage call. So to answer the question, whom should be the coordinator of the first stage? Industry is a very broad term. As Polivius said, normally the applicant consortia at the first stage of a 2-stage call are normally academics. They're normally universities or the regulators or their health foundations. But you have a certain amount of freedom. I mean, as I said, the consortium that are going to apply in the first stage, they're organically organizing. So they are themselves determining who they want in their team. And they have a lot of freedom in relation to this because the 45%, as Plivia said, is being met by industry. So really what you're talking about is you're just bringing together expertise. Now, if it turns out, for example, because you mentioned industry, if there's an SME, for example, who is really, really, really good, they could be considered
And
as,
it's not part of the private members.
and it's not one of the private members, yes, or a contributing partner, I guess. Then you could actually bring them in the actual applicant consortia, and you could consider, suggesting that they be coordinator. But usually, primarily because of the way they're set up, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very normal for one of the academics to take the role of coordinator. But we try to give flexibility to the applicant consortia and how they organize themselves, as long as the rules are followed.
So Desmond, it's up to them to decide how to organize themselves. We can have, for example, a coordinator, which is a university, for example, and another association, which is the scientific lead, or vice versa. So it's up to the consortium to decide their structure. And usually these coordinators on the first stage are the coordinators also of the second stage. Doesn't mean that they will change, but things can kind of change during the process.
Yeah, and just because Plivius mentioned it in relation to the science lead, usually, but again, this depends upon the construction of the specific final consortium or final application. Usually, if you look at the topic text, there's an option there for the industry to basically take a scientific leadership role if that suits the actual consortium. So what I would say is definitely there's a lot of latitude for the applicant consortium in relation to who's going to be the coordinator, and normally that suits everybody. But just think about the final configurations when talking about who's going to lead up the science.
Thank you. And so the next question is a clarification from a previous question from Vanessa. So she's writing to us. What I mean is, should we identify the industry partner that we want to join our project, or will the industry choose from among the project that advances to the second stage?
So in each topic, there is a list, as I said, of the pre-identified industry consortium, and whoever wins the first competitive round, whatever consortium gets through, they then join the pre-selected group of industry. So there's usually 8, 10, 12 industry members there and some contributing partners who are bringing the in-kind. And the idea is that pre-identified industry consortium joins with whoever won the first round, and that's the final form of the configuration. And then they go into negotiations and then discuss who's going to do what and how the in-kind is going to be used, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not really a question of selection. It's basically, if you get through the first round, you can tell from the topic text, from the very first moment you read the topic text, who you're going to be working with in the final form configuration, because all the industry and contributing partners are listed there, and how much they're bringing is listed there.
Thank you. The next question, in the event that multiple proposals achieve the highest score during the evaluation phase, what criteria will be used to determine the winning proposal?
So if we have equal score, there is a specific process that is described in the relevant annexes of the Horizon Europe. In the event we have multiple proposals with equal score, the first criterion that we will implement is the excellence, the one who receives a higher score in excellence. Then is impact. If once again these scores are equal, we move towards a further assessment. But as I said, this is described in the Horizon Europe annexes, and I think it's the Annex F. But in case you would like to have a look, just check the Horizon Europe, and everything will be described there, or send us an email and we can provide you with the relevant criteria accordingly.
Thank you. And the last question is from Svetlana. Regarding the excellence methodology criteria, is the IHI looking breakthrough, highly innovative and risky projects, or are we more close to already demonstrated, close to market scaling up projects?
Pre-clinical, pre-competitive. One of the things we say at IHI is that we have to be prepared to risk, and we have to be comfortable with the concept that some ideas, while looking very promising, do ultimately fail. So honestly, I think if you're looking at something which is using already demonstrated technology and is ready for the market, then that's not really where IHI is working. We're working in the pre-competitive area. We're working on, actually it's in the title, innovation help. So we want leading edge ideas brought by quality research, backed by the resources of industry to produce effects for, in areas of the health sector that need it most. So no, you should be comfortable taking risks, as long as Clivia said, please make sure that you're meeting all the challenges that are laid out in each topic text. That's the key point. But if you're meeting all the challenges in the topic text and you're coming in around the budget, which is, described, and you're being, innovative and, you're looking at risk, then, that sounds to me, generally like a good IHI application. And I think you're starting from a good place. That's the best way to put it.
Thank you. So now we need to close the webinar because we are over time. So I would like to remind you that the recording of the session and the slide will be published on our IHI website. And I will also encourage you to follow us on social media to know when we will be launching the call. I would also like to thank Desmond and Bolivius for the presentation and answering the question. Thank you all for your interest. And I hope to see you tomorrow morning for our next webinar. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.